So, welcome everyone to Happy Life Habits Inspiration Point. This is episode 4 of this podcast. So, really pleased to have you all with us. And just I'll share some slides and a little introduction, and then we'll get on with the main format of Inspiration Point. So, really warm welcome to those of you who are coming for the first time. Hope you enjoy the sessions, and a welcome back to those who've been coming for one or more sessions. And all the sessions are recorded, so we will be recording these. And when we start the main session, we'll ask you to switch your videos off, stay on mute, and then towards the end of the session, we'll open up for some Q&A, and that's when you can come off mute, switch your videos on, and ask a few questions. And this, the episodes are recorded and put onto Happy Life Habits Inspiration Point podcast on Anchor platform and a few other platforms, as well as the recordings on YouTube and the Happy Life Habits website page, so you can catch up on any of the ones you've missed or recap on the ones you have made it to. So that's how we're working. I like to start my sessions with a quick question, and it's just a checkpoint. So it's using a scale of 0 to 10, not using the number 7, but you're allowed fractions and decimals, and just take a checkpoint to see where you are at this point in time on that scale for yourself. So right now, just take a checkpoint and see where you are, and if you want to, you can drop that into the chat. And again, for those who are familiar with it, it's the number is for yourself. Do not worry about your number compared to other people's number. It's your own scale. Everyone's number is different. And with Happy Life Habits, what we're doing is reminding ourselves to take this checkpoint, see where we're at. And if it's a number we're not happy with, then the tools and the ideas and the things we share allow us to take action and increase that number. So that's how we're working, and you can see some, lovely figures coming through on that. So I appreciate that. That's great. And there's some fractions as well. Nice one, Dervish, 7.89. Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. No one will help you shift that up. If not during this session, contact me afterwards, and I can help you with that. Good. All right. So ground rules. The session, as I mentioned, is being recorded. If you have a mobile phone, if you just put it on silent for the duration, if you stay on mute, that would be appreciated. Have your videos off during the interview part, and when we come to the Q&A, you can switch on the videos and you can ask questions, and you can drop questions into the chat. I won't be actively looking at the chat, but Hirsch now will help me guide those questions to either ask during the session or at the end in the Q&A. So that's how we will work this. Introduction to everyone who aren't familiar with me. I'm Sanjay Shah. I'm a happiness coach trained in the science of happiness, and through Happy Life Habits, positively impacting people's happiness and well-being levels. An Inspiration Point is one of our projects, and what we're doing here is having inspiring, positive, extraordinary people come, share their journey, challenges, turning points, daily habits, and learning through personal development, happiness, and spirituality. So it gives us an uplift, it gives us an opportunity to tap into their wisdom and remind ourselves of some of that wisdom and deal with any challenges we're facing, or be better equipped to face challenges when they do come up, and just help us stay on that path of happiness. So that's how we are working this. A friend of mine, Brittany Shah, she shared in a couple of sessions ago that with Inspiration Point, what it did was it made us think that whilst we're all unique, elements of our stories will resonate with each other, and certainly we can seek to inspire one another. And that's certainly been true of the 3 sessions we've had already, and of the following 3 that we will be having, including today's one. You will find segments in there that will resonate with you. So the kind of questions we ask is, what makes you happy? What are you currently doing that inspires you? What's one of your favorite quotes? And every guest who comes on the episode asks the same standard 10 questions, but then we would do delve in and deviate from those questions to pull out some of the interesting nuggets. Our whole series of 6 episodes has been sponsored, very kindly sponsored by Raymond James Stanmore. So really appreciate Kamal Haria, the branch principal, in backing us to get Inspiration Point launched, and really helping to sponsor this. Really appreciate that faith in the project. So thank you. So I'm going to share a little bit of a journey and a story. So some of you are aware that personal development's been a strong element of my life for more than 20 years. That journey started when I went to Unleash the Power weekend with Tony Robbins, where we did a fire walk that night. And this was in November 94. And it was Sanjay who had introduced myself and 5 other family members, my brothers, my cousins, and my uncle, all of us as a group of 6, to go to that event. Sanjay had gone the year before when Tony Robbins first came to the UK and said, "You guys, you've got to come experience this, check it out." And that's when the world of Tony Robbins, personal development, as well as other likes of Brian Tracy and all of these people became part of the world that I am in and learning and growing. That year was when I was in my first job for a US consultancy, and I'd been out to work in the US at that time, and I'd gone out in September and was out in the US for a few months. And I was in Chicago at that time. And on a Thursday night, I took a plane, flew from Chicago to London, landed in London Friday morning. Friday evening, 6 o'clock, we went to the Unleash the Power weekend at Alexandra Palace in North London. 11 o'clock at night, we did a fire walk, which just blew our minds. And 2 or 3 in the morning, we're back home, buzzing and talking about this experience. And then Saturday and Sunday and Monday, again, the weekend continued, unfolded, and was just amazing and magical. And then Tuesday, midday, back on a plane, back out to Chicago to continue at work. And that's how this journey started, and was really memorable for me. Sanjay, along with Nick Williams, are episode 1, and Vigil Coulson, who'll be episode 5 next week, are 3 of the contributors to an article we did before the first lockdown in the UK called Together in Isolation. And I am resharing the link to that and will send that out to you, because as we go into another lockdown during this week, some of the ideas and suggestions in that are super useful for us to benefit from, and to help us ride down this journey of lockdown. So, introduction to Sanjay. You guys will have read some of the information that's shared, and some of the bits which you may not be aware of is, in the note we said Sanjay had a heart attack at the age of 42. He's had 3 heart attacks, and he himself says technically after 3 heart attacks he shouldn't be here, but he is. He's had a breakdown in his health, his relationship, and his business, and he's overcome those, and he shares how he deals with these things. He's trained with the #1 person who teaches people to do firewalks. So Sanjay is a firewalk trainer, and part of his training was 100 firewalks in one night, and he trained with the person who trained Tony Robbins. He part of the work he does is he delivers the mindset and success section of Simon Sushi's Property Mastermind course that some of you may be familiar with in the property investing world. And he's developed his own method called SOAR, which he will share with us as well. So that is an introduction to Sanjay. And the other bonus is he's also my cousin. So very blessed to have cousins who are sharing this kind of work and saying yes to coming on to Inspiration Point. So with that, I will just come back and stop my screen share, and we can start our conversation. So Sanjay, again, deep gratitude and thank you so much. One, for introducing me to Tony Robbins and UPW. I don't think I thanked you properly for that, but that, as I said, was part of a wonderful journey for me. And to coming onto Inspiration Point today to share your experiences, your wisdom as an emotional intelligence expert. But before I let you tell us what emotional intelligence is and anything further than that, the first question I like to ask people is, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Very simple things nowadays compared to when I first started. But I'm at my happiest in moments like this when I'm actually able to share what I've learned, because I've seen hundreds of people's lives change in my own events over the last 20 years. I don't know how many because we're never really counted, but I've been told it's well over 1,000 now. The key to all of that, though, was being able to see people transform. And that's something that you can't really put into words when that change occurs right in front of your very own eyes. And then you go on over the next 3 years to see them do amazing things, which everybody is capable of. Every single person on this actual webinar now is capable of something amazing in their own right, and it's finding what your gift is and sharing that. And for me, I found what my gift was, and I get the opportunity to share it. So just doing what I do every day makes me happy. And I actually learned that from Tony Robbins after that first event, because I did a further event with him where he shared with people, what are the sort of things that make people happy? And the ones that had really complicated things which made them happy, whether it was business success or relations or whatever, were never truly happy most of the time. But the people that had the simplest things, I remember he shared the story of one guy who was asked, what really makes you happy? And he said, I'm happy when I wake up in the morning because I know I've got one more day. And he compared that to somebody who had also a checklist of things to tick off to make him happy. So which one do you think is the easiest one to achieve? And of course, it was the one thing rather than the 10 things or whatever it was that the other guy had. So the less things that you have that make you happy, the greater the chance of you being happy. That's what I discovered.
Yeah, and I think the example you just shared also just touches on one of the favorite topics that I love to share, on gratitude. So just being waking up is something for us to be grateful for, which we often share. So, brilliant. And I know gratitude plays a big part in your life as well.
Yeah,
So,
it's especially kind of pertinent with my health history. That if I wake up in the morning, it's been a successful day already.
Yes, brilliant. So, what are you currently doing that inspires you?
I've been, for the last 18 months, gathering a small team of people to come and help me on my events. And they've been gathering the skills, and some of them got trained in some of the things that I do, and are now going on to train other people as well. So that's been really inspiring for me. But the latest thing is I got the opportunity to host a program on a new TV channel on the internet. And that's really exciting because I've never done anything like that. And the challenge is I've got to do that in the time of lockdown, is come up with some content which I can't do any of what I'm really good at, which is the live events. So on the one hand, it's challenging. On the other hand, it's quite inspiring. That when I look back to, in my case, 1993, when I first went to the Tony Robbins event, where I was then, compared to where I am now, it's like two completely different people.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So, yeah.
So, okay, so you're training up people to help share further the work you're doing and impacting more and more people in that way. Brilliant. And you're training up people. So I guess this is an appropriate time to maybe ask, what are you training them in? What is emotional intelligence or EQ? I think, yeah, it'll be nice to understand that.
Yeah, sure. There are many kind of different definitions, just like with mind intelligence. You know, if you ask somebody, what is mind intelligence, they'll come up with a whole host of different answers, and the same with EQ. The most widely used definition comes from an author by the name of Daniel Goldberg, who's written basically, you know, the Bible, I guess, in emotional intelligence. And that is very good. My take on it is very different in the sense that most of the learning that you do around emotional intelligence, I don't regard as emotional intelligence because it still relies on the mind, and mind and emotions are very different. They have very different rules. So the mind is the home of logic and reason, of sequence and order. So what do I mean by that? 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D is sequence and it's order and it's logical. That applies to the mind. So anything that requires that pertains to the mind. In emotions, what's relevant is there is no logic, there is no order, there is no sequence. So one can lead to million or to 3 or to whatever. It kind of bounces around. There is no sequence and there's no order. What does that mean? That means the mind, which is also the home of understanding, cannot understand emotional intelligence. So if you're looking to understand what emotional intelligence is, good luck. And if you work it out, please come and tell me, because I'm still trying to do that after 30 years. I actually gave up many years ago, but there is no understanding of emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is an experience. So you can experience emotional intelligence, but the moment you try and verbalize it, you're going to fail. So let me give you an analogy, at least, or a metaphor, which takes you close to it, but you will never truly get it in words, because that's impossible in the realm of emotional intelligence. Even the names of the emotions are pointing at something, but in that very pointing, you can't really precisely say what it is. So this is all you need to learn about emotional intelligence. So just look at this. This is a bottle of water. If you go to the shops, you can find many bottles of water, different colors, different shapes, different sizes. Inside them is the same thing, water. A bit like humans, different shapes, different color, different sizes. But inside us is the same thing. And it's the same thing as the bottle of water. It's mainly water. The only thing is, if you want to understand, and I use that term loosely, emotions, then also when you think of emotions, think of energy. I use the two terms interchangeably. So emotions equal energy, and energy is only useful if it's moving. So if you have energy, say in an electric wire, in an electric current, it's only useful if that electric current can actually go somewhere. If that wire is blocked, if there's resistance, then you won't be able to run the appliance of it. In a car, the fuel is only useful as long as the energy is flowing down the pipes into the engine and being used by the engine. If it's blocked, you can't use the energy. If emotions are energy, and in humans we block the flow of emotions, which is what most humans are taught to do by society, then eventually we run out of that energy. So how is this emotional intelligence? So if you can see the water, I don't know how clearly you can see, but you can see it's just water until I do this. Now,
Yeah, bubbles.
that's bubbles, energy moving. Just notice them. Now, listen to this. I'm just going to take the lid off. You hear that?
Mm.
That's the energy beginning to move. So emotional intelligence is no good when you got that lid on. It doesn't exist. So emotional intelligence is first by taking the lid off. So you're doing this, you let out the excess energy, then you unscrew the lid and you take it off. If you don't do that, if you take it off very quickly, what happens? You'll get an explosion of water. Yeah. So emotional intelligence is regulating the flow of that energy as well.
Mm.
So you do this, and then life comes and shakes you up through life events, and that energy flows. And as long as that energy is flowing, you can do something with it. You can use it to achieve your goals. You can use it to achieve your dreams, or you can use it to survive a heart attack, which is what happened to me. But if it's blocked, that's the sort of time when you have a heart attack. So the heart attack saved my life because it taught me how to do this. That's what the first one taught me. The second one taught me to keep the lid off even whilst I was having the heart attack. And that meant that energy was flowing and I survived it to the hospital for them to fix me again. And that heart attack was much bigger than the first one. So that's emotional intelligence. You don't need to know anything else except how to take that lid off and how to allow the energy to flow through your body to help you achieve the life that you wish to achieve, to live the life that you want to live. So that's my simple definition of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. This demonstration resonates a lot with some of the understanding I've had on things in that manner. And yeah, it's good to have that visual representation done. So that naturally, yeah, I think brings us to the next question, which is, what has been your journey, some of the challenges and major turning points? So perhaps you can start from some of the earlier years as you were, I think when we were speaking education-wise, and then I guess leading into the first heart attack and so forth.
Yeah, education-wise, kind of life-wise, I was fortunate, like I think most of the family, that as youngsters, we generally had a life where there weren't that many problems compared to others in society. My challenges started really once I left school and went to university. Is I went first from school to dental school, and I realized quite quickly that I didn't really enjoy where I was. And so obviously I didn't work as hard as I could have. And I failed one of the exams and eventually had to drop out of dentistry. And everybody thought that was a shame because I'd wasted a year or I'd wasted whatever time it was, except for me. I thought I'd learned something about the human body, which made me appreciate the work of doctors and especially surgeons. Because part of that dental degree was we had to dissect human bodies, and I did that. And uh, it was fascinating. And then I realized that when a surgeon does that, they do the same thing, except they've got blood all over the place. And that really grew my appreciation of that. And then through that, you know, I kind of dropped out. I did another degree, still didn't know what I really wanted to do. So I went into chartered accountancy, and 18 months later, I was made redundant. So I came and joined the family business, which is the one thing I'd been avoiding all along because I didn't want to work in the family business. But it actually worked out to be great because I ended up working there for several years, and then my dad's health took a turn for the worse, and we got through that. And whilst I was there, I was able to go and do things like Tony Robbins and the other courses that I did, the other people that I trained with. And all of that was great. And at the end of that, when we sold the shop eventually, when my father passed away, and soon after that, my uncle decided to sell it, that was my opportunity to do what I dreamt of for several years after Tony Robbins, which is do something meaningful. And I decided to launch a career in therapeutic line because that's what I trained in during the intervening period. And very quickly discovered that I didn't know anything about running a business. And that business, along with the other friends that I had who were in it, basically went into liquidation within a year of starting. Ended up with huge amount of debt, which took me years then to clear. Which meant when I started again, still in the same line of business, I worked really hard. And I worked really hard and I got great results, but I still wasn't really making that much money. And in 2006, I announced at one of the events, that was my last event. And fortunately, there were people in the audience who were my friends who took me to one side, gave me a bit of a slapping around and said, no, you're not giving up. And I continued, except in January the following year, I was still tired. And that's when my body said, stop. And that was the heart attack, the first one. But it was a small one. It wasn't like that. It was so small that I didn't really know that I'd had it until after the fact. But it got me into hospital, And they put me together again in a brilliantly, as the NHS does. But because it stopped me for a while, it was a rethink about how I was going to live the rest of my life. And one of the choices was not to work hard. I still had to work fairly hard over the next few years, but I worked less and less hard. And then 8 years later, as I was becoming successful, as I was getting the financial success that I needed for financial security, the second heart attack came, and that came out of the blue. And I say it came because I needed to learn another lesson. And I was quite fit, quite healthy. It was actually whilst I was with my trainer in the training gym that the second heart attack came in. It was much bigger. They had to call the ambulance out, which got there pretty quickly, fortunately. He rushed me to the nearest hospital, and I was in the operating theatre within an hour of having the heart attack. So that time, and the fact that whilst I was in the ambulance, I was actually in a state of acceptance and peace. When I had the first heart attack, my sense was I'm too young to die. I wasn't even 42. I'm too young to die. It's not fair. I still want to live. You know, I haven't done things. And over the next 8 years, I did a huge amount of things that I wouldn't have done had it not been for the first heart attack.
Yeah.
The second heart attack, when it came, I was accepting and peaceful that if this was it, I was okay. I'd lived. Acceptance and peace are very high on the energy scale, especially peace. And that's the very thing that probably saved my life, because my body actually was very energized, despite the fact that I was having a heart attack. And talking to one of the surgeons afterwards, uh, who knew I'd had a second one, he said, it's quite remarkable. You haven't actually had more damage than you seem to have from the heart attacks. And that went by. And then 18 months later, I had another heart attack out of the blue. But it was a tiny one. And I call that a tap on the shoulder, which was saying, are you still paying attention? And the paying attention was slow down, take it easy, do less work. And from that, I worked the least amount I'd ever worked. And suddenly the company became far more successful than it had. So what I teach people as a result of that is be more, i.e. be more emotionally intelligent. The result is you end up doing less and achieving more. And it's a complete paradox when you kind of look at it logically, because how can you achieve more by doing less? Well, it's the being more. The being more is the energy that you put into the actions of doing. So you can be more, i.e. have more energy going into the actions, or less energy going into the actions, which means you have to do more actions. You still achieve the result, but you'll be knackered at the end of the day and have a heart attack maybe, or some other illness.
Tell me if it resonates with this quote. And I shared this one when we had episode 2 with Anuj on the Zen pharmacist. There's a Bruce Lee quote, which sounds appropriate again. And the quote was Bruce Lee saying, I do not fear the man who knows 1,000 different kicks. I fear the man who knows one kick and has practiced it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So the depth as opposed to the breadth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm regarded as being good at what I do. I personally, it's just something that I did. It wasn't a case of I got to become really good at it, but I've done it for so long that what I take to be just common sense and natural now, it's easy to forget that other people may not even know the basics of it. And what I take for granted may actually be completely brand new to somebody else. And that comes as a result of doing something and keep on doing it and keep on doing it until you forget even when you started, because it seems like this is how you've always been.
And when we were chatting in preparation, you had, I think, shared with me, it was physical, was it physical heartache or physical breakdown, or when the body
it was an emotional breakdown, because
yeah,
that happened at university actually before my final exams, and a series of things happened which led to an emotional breakdown, which wasn't picked up really. I was put on antidepressants, packed off to a counsellor, which made me feel even worse because all I did was cry in the session. And I came out feeling far worse than when I went in. So I stopped that very quickly. But the thing is, I had that emotional breakdown because guess what? I didn't know how to deal with the emotions that life was throwing at me. And yeah, in me, that lid was so firmly on, I couldn't even feel those emotions. So I had no energy coming out. And I didn't know it at the time, but that, I guess, was the early preparation and then the appreciation of what I'd come across in terms of how to actually utilize that energy.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. So you mentioned acceptance and peace being the higher energies. Do you want to share what some of the other energies are and what level they're at? Just
Yeah,
context.
sure. Yeah, sure. So in order, apathy, apathy is the sense of can't be bothered, haven't got the, you can't even get out of bed. Well, guess why? Because you have no energy. Then grief is the energy of loss or the fear of loss. So it's not just the loss of a loved one, say through death. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a favorite, I don't know, item. It could be anything, but it's associated with loss or the fear of loss. So right now, what's happening with coronavirus? There is a fear of the virus, which is a fear of life and limb. And also there's the fear of losing your job and how would you survive? There's the fear of losing your business. There's a fear, there's fears of losing all sorts of things. So there's a lot of grief around in the world at the moment that people don't realize because grief doesn't always show up in the behavior. It's not always manifested by somebody just crying their eyes out. It could be a low level and underlying, but it sucks the energy out of the body. Then there's fear. Fear is very low on the scale of emotion. Fear is actually better than grief because in fear, or in apathy and grief, there is a lack of movement. In fear, for the first time, there is movement. It could be running away from, which is movement. It could be running towards and fighting the fear, which is movement. But where it still is, freeze. You can also freeze in fear. So it's fight, flight, or freeze, the three reactions to fear. But it's more energy than the other two. And then lust is wanting something. Lust actually gets you moving. You really want that job. You really want that car. You really want that holiday. It gets you moving. But if you get stuck in it, then the very thing that you want, you won't have. So you need to move higher. So now you want something, and you work hard, like I did, and you're still not getting it. So what do? You work harder. You're still not getting it, and anger starts to come up because now it feels unfair. You're doing all this hard work and still not getting the result. So anger seems like a high energy, but a lot of the energy of anger is wasted because the lid blows off. And when it blows off, that spew of emotion is wasted energy. It's flowing, but it's flowing everywhere. It's like a shotgun blast compared to a laser beam. So anger, whilst a higher energy, is wasted. And then beyond the anger, just the very energy of anger will still get you results. It won't make you friends, but it'll get you results. And then you start to get into pride. And it's not the pride of a job well done. It's the pride where you look down on other people because they haven't achieved what you achieved. There's a great example. Maybe he's going to get voted out today. Who knows? But Donald Trump, he's stuck in pride. He has to boast about everything. That's what people in pride do. They boast about their past achievements because they have to, because they're scared they won't be able to achieve them again. And then there is a line, which I call the line of resistance. You have to get over that line into the higher level feelings. And the first high level feeling is courage. Courage is taking a step forward, even though you don't know where you're going to end up. And in the firewall, it's standing at the edge and taking that very first step onto the coals. And there's this invisible barrier, like a force field in the Star Trek films or the science fiction films. You have to step through. That's courage. It's doing the thing you said you'd do long after the mood you said it in has left you. What's the mood? The feeling that you said it in. And then there's acceptance, which is a much higher energy, because this energy scale is in a straight line. It's an exponential line that rises very slowly and then shoots up. And acceptance is quite high up on that. Acceptance, people think that to accept is weakness. What they don't realize is it doesn't feel like there's a lot of energy, but there is a huge amount of energy, which is latent energy. It's there to be used, but until you actually use it, you don't really sense it. And then peace is even higher, and peace can look like apathy, where there's not much movement. But the thing about peace is there is a huge amount of stored energy, because you use far less energy in peace than you actually need. So you always got an abundance of energy on there. And so that's the kind of, in terms of emotions, there are hundreds of emotions, but they fall into those 9 categories. And the ones below the line rob you of energy. How do you know you're in a low emotion? Because you're feeling knackered, because you're feeling tired, because you're getting frustrated. All those are low level emotions. How do you know you're feeling, you're in a high emotion? Because you're happy, you're laughing. Happiness is a high emotion. You're loving, you're accepting, you're grateful. All of those are high level emotions. And the paradox is they actually lead to more success than the lower level emotions.
And what's quite interesting also with what you've just shared, it's fascinating, that stuff, but it so resonates with the uh, many of the spiritual teachings as well, where they're talking about, as you described, the lower energies are the ones we want to avoid and get rid of, from our realms, and the higher ones are the ones which are, universally accepted as showing, kindness and love and peace and compassion and all of these. So, yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. So, in terms of for yourself, in staying above that resistance line, what are some of the daily habits and routines that you use to support you to be those high energies, but also in general, I guess, with your health and just in all around us? What are some of your regular habits and routines?
They're very simple, but the number one I'd say is gratitude. Because when I wake up in the morning and open the curtains, I've got a nice garden outside where I live, and I'd stand there and I appreciate the garden first. And in the lockdown, the wildlife out there, the bird song, it was much louder than during times when there's a lot of traffic noise. So being grateful for the simplest of things. What can you be grateful for today? It might even be, as that guy said to Tony Robbins, the fact that I wake up means I've been successful. And it seems pretty kind of innocuous, but you tap into the higher level energy straight away. Acceptance, accepting what's happening. Okay, tomorrow, if I remember correctly, sorry, is it tomorrow night that lockdown begins?
Yeah.
Well, lots of people are already complaining. Well, there's no point in complaining about something that's going to happen or is happening. So you might not like it when somebody bumps into your car, but can you accept that somebody's bumped into your car? Because if you're fighting it, you're still resisting it. Just accept it, and then you've got the energy to take the action that you need to. So when I had that second heart attack, the acceptance was, okay, I've had a heart attack. I knew what had happened. I didn't realize it was still happening, but I knew. But I went into acceptance. Okay, whether I like it or not, this is happening. Stop fighting it. Save your energy for something useful. So lots of things happen. It doesn't matter how emotionally intelligent you get, life is going to throw a curveball at you. Can you be grateful for the lesson it's bringing? Can you accept that it's happening? Because it will eventually pass, and something good will come out of it. So gratitude, acceptance, and then just literally having a laugh with people. Be around people that make you laugh. Watch comedy shows. There was a guy, I think Norman Cousins was his name, that Toddy told me about. He was known as the man who laughed himself to health because he was diagnosed with cancer. What did he do? He checks himself out of the hospital, stays at home and watches comedy films all day long. Went back to the hospital 3 months later, and they couldn't find the cancer in it. And Harvard did a study where they concluded that when people were happy, they had a stronger immune system than when they weren't happy, i.e. miserable or fearful or angry or whatever. Do you think you're going to survive coronavirus better if you're happy or whether if you're fearful? It's a choice that everybody can exercise on a daily basis.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely.
that simple laugh in the face of fear, there's some truth in that, because laughter puts you in a higher energy than fearful. The person laughing is more likely to win a fight than the person in fear.
Yeah, no, and laughter yoga is, one of the realms of the science of happiness, and the studies they've done that resonate with what you're saying. One, when you're laughing, you're getting oxygen moving around the body, the lungs are opening up, oxygen to the brain, and some of the happy chemicals we often talk about being released. And that's just to name, a few of the benefits, but so many more. So definitely.
I've got a doctor that I work with who comes and helps me on my events, and he says he wishes that what I teach could be given out on the NHS and the prescription, because people would need to take less drugs if they knew some of this.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. Brilliant. Okay, now that's cool. When we were chatting, part of your, not necessarily your daily routine, but you've got some books and stuff that you've got by the bedside, and it's not like, okay, you're dipping in there and reading them religiously every day, like 5 pages or 10 pages or anything like that, but there's a bit of magic that happens when you do dip into them. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are lots of books. It could be fiction, it could be non-fiction, it could be anything which inspires you. So I'm not really into poetry, but I've come across a couple of books where they resonate really strongly with me, and I keep them by the bedside because every now and then I'll just feel this tug to open up the book and read something, and I'll just read one thing, and it will immediately take me into a state of bliss or happiness, because now my brain's been conditioned that whenever it reads something like that, it starts to go into that state on there. So find out what it is. It could be anything. It doesn't matter what it is, but does it have the ability to transport you from whatever you are feeling at that moment into another realm, which is above the line of, in terms of the emotion.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you. So what is one of your favorite quotes? There's a couple I think you mentioned when we were chatting.
Yeah, the one that's easier to remember is from Ram Dass, who passed away recently. And I was introduced to Ram Dass by Tolly, because around that time, Ram Dass, after many decades doing what he was doing, had a stroke. And he described that event later on as a stroke of grace, because his life, actually, he said he enjoyed his life much more after the stroke than before the stroke, because it enabled him to do things which would have never been possible. And in his teachings, he talks about everybody is here for a purpose here. And he said, we are all walking each other home. So there's a book that's published recently. It's one of the books back there. And it is literally walking each other home, because every person you meet is there for a particular reason. They're helping you take the next step towards home. Yeah.
No, carry on. Sorry.
So that, by its very simplicity, it resonates with me, and all the people that I kind of collaborate with the work that I do, we all believe that we're walking each other home towards whatever home is for us.
No, that's brilliant. And by any chance, that Ram Dass book, is it titled How Can I Help? Something to that effect?
I can actually have it here somewhere, hopefully.
The reason I asked that is there's a talk I went to on Thursday. Oh, okay, Walking Each Other Home, that's the title of it. Fantastic. Yeah,
it's It's a simple book, and I like it. He's got some amazing recordings. But the other one that you mentioned, what was the name you mentioned?
Um, how can I help?
Yeah, that's also, I believe, is one of his books. And uh, when you approach life from a place, when you meet somebody, instead of what can I get, you approach it from how can I help. It changes everything.
Yeah, no, perfectly. Yeah, fully agree with that. But yeah, it's interesting that over the last uh, not even a week, Ramdas has popped up a couple of times in conversations.
Yeah,
And
if you go onto Netflix, there's a program. If you just search for Ramdas, there's two programs. The one that I'm thinking, it's only half an hour long, and it's shot literally months before he passed away.
okay,
And don't go looking for excitement or anything. Don't go looking for a message. But if you just sit and watch that film, half an hour, just watch and be present, you'll find yourself dropping into a state of peace.
okay, brilliant. We will add that to our list to watch. Perfect. There was another quote, which is a bit more of a tricky
Yeah,
one
yeah,
to
yeah.
both say as well as get your head around, but I think it's one worth sharing.
Yeah, it was from a guy called Lester Levinson, who was an American teacher who coincidentally had his first art work at the age of 42, just like me. And then he had a second one as well. Or rather, it was his second one that was at the age of 42. And he was given 3 months to live by his physicians. There was no such thing as a heart surgery or fitting stents, anything like that. So basically, they said, Lester, we need the bed. We're going to ask you to go home and start preparing for death. Sort out your affairs. You've got 3 months. And he went home and he was pretty angry because one, he'd been turfed out of hospital. Two, he just asked the simple question, how the hell did I get to this place where at the age of 42, I'm about to die? And he went on an inner journey and he discovered a number of things which were life-changing. And if you heard of Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force, what's not mentioned in the book is Lester Levinson was his teacher as well. So a lot of the theories that David Hawkins then proved through medical type experiments, the original kind of concepts came from what Lester Levinson had discovered. And then his quote was, we are all unlimited beings, limited only by the concepts of limitation that we hold in mind. So let me break that down. We are all unlimited beings, limited only by the concepts of limitation. What are concepts of limitation? Concepts are just ideas. So we are all unlimited beings, limited only by the idea of limitation that we hold in mind, i.e., that we focus on. Let go of that idea of limitation and you head towards unlimited nature. And that's what his entire work was teaching, how to become unlimited by letting go of the ideas of limitation that we hold in mind.
Brilliant. That again, yeah, resonates a lot with some of the stuff uncovering and
If you
learning.
go back, if you go back to the firewalk, did anybody who does does anybody think it's possible when it's standing in front of the coals and they're so hot that your face is burning?
Mm.
And yet millions of people are able to do it. And in my firewalk training, we got stretched because we didn't have to walk once or twice. We had to walk a minimum of 100 times across the coals in one evening. By that stage, you don't really think of a firewalk in the same way because your whole concept around fire has been changed.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. No, thank you. So, what is an achievement that you're most proud of?
I don't know. There's been so many, and I also teach how to let go of the feeling of pride, so I don't hang on to it. But I had a call the other day actually with my doctor friend and his partner, and two of the children were there who'd been struggling, and they'd eventually asked to speak with me because they'd heard about me through the parents, who finally said, "Can we speak to him?" Because they got intrigued enough with what was going on for them in about I don't know, half an hour of speaking to them, you just saw the light bulbs get come on, because children get emotional intelligence in a fraction of the time that adults do. And that was inspiring just to see that happen again in front of my eyes.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Share. And expanding on the book story that we were sharing for, what is one of your favorite books and why?
Um,
I think when we were
the,
speaking, you shared the film.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, is one of my favorites. Uh, uh, but it's also got a movie now called Peaceful Warrior, which I believe actually, for somebody brand new, it's better than the book. The book is more detailed, but the movie is brilliant in the concept. And yeah, when I do a 3-day retreat twice a year, which is, well, kind of my flagship thing that I do, that's the thing that I've become known for. And quite often we show that film on one of the evenings. And I remember one guy who was a BA pilot, he came up to me in the end and he said, "How on earth did you find a film that teaches everything that you just taught?" And it's because Dan Millman is steeped in this stuff that I'm teaching as well. And the concept is that it's done in an entertainment way. So even if you watch the film and you never learned anything, it's still a good movie to watch because it's a good storyline. It's got, I think, Nick Nolte, so a well-known
That's right.
actor in
Yeah.
it. And because it's so accessible, I love it. And it's introduced millions more people to these concepts than perhaps the book on its own might have done. So I do rate that book very highly. But there are so many books that it's almost impossible to pick on one and say that's the all-time favorite.
Yeah. Now, I remember that book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, was given to me in my
Yeah,
20s, and I loved it. And
yeah,
I also recall Anuj getting hold of the film and us watching that. So definitely, yeah, it's a powerful one. Thank you for that. Um, what did you learn from your parents?
humility and gratitude. Sorry about the noise in the background. The phone's going, always does when I'm on a conference. uh, humility and gratitude, I think. To be humble is very difficult to do in most cases because of the way society conditions us. You know, we can get uh, kind of to a place where we forget about simple things, and just to have the humility to do that and to meet other people from that place as well. I mean, again, if I just use an example, and it's just relevant. Uh, if you look at Donald Trump, is he humble? You know, you just know when people aren't, but that doesn't endear him to people. But then you look at somebody like Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King or the many others that have been who seemingly don't achieve much, and yet they're remembered decades or even hundreds of years after their lifetime. It was because of their humility.
Yeah.
The gratitude part is just always be grateful for what you have rather than craving for the things that you don't have.
Yeah, no, powerful. Both of those are superb qualities and virtues for us to cultivate, and I find them really powerful. So, no, I appreciate that. Um, the penultimate question: who or what are your inspirers?
Who or what? Again, in terms of who, there are many, but the one that I always keep coming back to is Tolly Burkan. Tolly Burkan was my file walking teacher. He was Tony Robbins' file walking teacher. He taught T. Harv Eker. He taught many other famous people. And when you meet people like Tolly, something magical happens, which you don't always know at the time, but you might kind of suddenly realize what it is 10, 15, 20 years later. And they kind of sow a seed in you, which grows and grows and grows. And until it's big enough for you to notice, you don't notice it on there. But he was extremely successful. He's not known worldwide, but the people that he's trained are known worldwide for the impact that they have. He's quite happy to be in the background teaching these people. And he lives a lifestyle which is very humble. You know, he lived in a kind of house out in the mountains, which was like a cabin. Didn't have a flash card, didn't have anything flash. And from what I know of him, he donated a lot of his money away to worthy causes because he didn't need all of that. He just lived a very simple lifestyle. And I think he's had a bigger impact on me than others. And I've had some amazing teachers that are equally as powerful. Maybe because he was the first one that had that impact. I don't know, but I remember him. Yeah.
Excellent. No, thank you. And the final question from me, and the audience, please start thinking any questions you'd like to ask. But um, anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to, for me to ask and you to answer? Anything you'd like to share that I haven't asked?
Oh, blimey. Have you got me? Okay. What is the
or
next?
anything you'd like to share?
I just sorry, like, what came up? What is the next phase of my life? Because I don't know. And what would I like it to be? I'd like it to be more about empowering other people to do what I'm doing, because then more can get done than I on my own can do. So
Yeah.
more people can benefit from them. Not because my system's the best, it's just a system, but it's something that works just like many others. And the more people that can get it, the better we as a human race can be. And again, it's all about walking each other home. So this is my way of helping other people walk home.
Fabulous. No, thank you so much for that. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the format of the questions and stuff. Opening up to the audience, if you had any questions you'd like to ask Sanjay on what he's shared. Now is the opportunity to ask. And yeah, you can either put it in the chat or just press the space bar and switch your video on and ask if you would like to know anything more about either his journey or emotional intelligence or anything that's been discussed today.
Hi.
Hi there, Killen.
Yeah, I just want to ask, how did Sanjay motivate himself from the like the heart attacks he had, just to try and get himself back on track?
It depends on there were different ways. The first time was really kind of going back to basics to some of the teachers that I've come across at that time. And really in the next year, I went on a much more intensive personal development journey. So I had a payout from insurance, which I could have paid the mortgage off with, but I chose to actually spend on me. And it took me a lot longer to pay the mortgage. But that money that I spent, which was in the tens of thousands, going to America many times over the next year, putting myself in front of the best is what really did it for me. Because one, it helped me deal with the kind of the crap, if I call it, that was going on in my head. And secondly, it taught me a bunch of skills which made me the type of trainer that I am today. So it's really important not to isolate yourself, to have somebody you can talk to. And quite often people say, well, I don't have somebody to talk to. Well, go find a teacher somewhere. Go and talk to them. They'll talk to you. There's no reason why anybody should be on their own. Do not try and do this on your own when you go through a tough time, because the energy of more than one person is not the sum. So if you look at David Hawkins' work, he measures energy from a scale of 0 to 1,000, and courage starts at 200. So all the other emotions that I spoke about, apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, and all the subsets of them, which are most emotions, fall below 200. And it's a logarithmic scale, which means it starts off flat and then gets steep. So courage, acceptance, and peace hold the bulk of the energy. And he said, most of the time, until 1989, humanity never crossed 200. So we lived below 200 as a whole. In 1989, we crossed over 200. And for the first time, things started to change en masse. What happened in 1989? The Berlin Wall came down, the Eastern dictators started to fall, all sorts of things. So humanity went from below the line into courage and started to live from courage. But he said, just two people vibrating at 300 affect 93,000 people, if I remember correctly, who are below 200. If you do the maths of this, just two people above 300 or 300 or above affect 93,000 people. So what you might find difficult, if you gather in a group, becomes far easier. And that's why I always surround myself with groups of inspiring people. And one of the groups I belong to, Jeff, you've been a part of that group, and it is inspiring. The people in that group have gone on to do things which are really great things that they perhaps wouldn't have done had they tried to do it on their own on there. So if you're going through a challenge, do not try and do it on your own. Find somebody, talk to Shane, come to me, talk to me. But it is really important that inspiration, that energy can come from other people as much as yourself.
The power of community and connection is, so important. That's the work I'm focusing on with these events and all the other stuff we're doing. It's so key. Brilliant. So thank you for that. I'm just going to share a couple of things on the screen. So Sanjay's website is sanjayshah.tv, and he's got an ebook that is available for download on that site if you want to know a bit more about emotional intelligence. So that is available. So please do visit the site and get yourself a copy of that. Our next, so actually, I'll take that opportunity to say, Sanjay, really, thank you so much for sharing wholeheartedly your journey, your experience, and spending the time with us this evening. Really appreciate that and partake in that. And hopefully, in the future, we can do a few more collaborations and share some more of our wisdom with everyone. So that's brilliant. And next week, we have episode 5, and this is so Sanjay's a cousin from my mum's side. Next week we have Vigil Coulson, who is a cousin from my dad's side, and she's been through a journey, being a lecturer, had a breakdown, and now is a therapist and has created her own therapy technique called the quantum life technique, and it was really impacting and serving people with that, which is a combination of different skills she's learned from Joe Dispenza and Marissa Peer and a few other people in that manner. And she's been steeped in learning stuff about happiness and energies and that for many years, and has authored 2 books and contributed to 2 books, and is in the middle of her 3rd at the moment. So we'll find out more about that next week. And then 2 weeks after that, on the 24th, we have Sanjay Shah, a very good friend of ours, and he's the balance giver. He's won a lifetime award from the offshore community for his contributions to various areas. And again, for both of those events, the tickets are open, but a good bulk of them have gone. So please definitely sign up tonight if you're interested in coming to those. And on the 1st of December, keeping with our Tuesdays sessions, not sure of the timing yet, but Pretty and myself, so Pretty from Lightside and myself, we will be doing a session on managing your mindset and your money, one we've done earlier in the year, which we think is important to share. So that's one which we'll have available for people to book and come to. As I mentioned, Sanjay, Bijal, Dick Williams, and a whole bunch of other people have contributed to an article called Together in Isolation, which was shared just before the lockdown earlier this year. I've looked at that article again and think everything that's in there still holds true, and it controls a variety of themes about controlling the controllables, routine, health, connection, learning, kindness, spirituality, faith, nature. And it's not just those things, but it's actionable things you can do. And it's helped me ride this pandemic and this lockdown, and it's going to help me continue ride it through to the end of this year and onwards. So really, I recommend you have a look at that. There's poems, there's songs, podcasts, all different resources linked into there. Really useful stuff. Gratitude, Sanjay's mentioned, and I didn't queuing up to share it, but all 6 of our speakers for Inspiration Point I know are practices of gratitude, and we've got the waiting list open for our January session, Monday the 4th of the new year. We will have our month-long gratitude and journal workshop and training course open, really to help you build that habit. And at the moment, there's a dozen or so people who are taken through on the November course, and hopefully really benefiting from it as we go into this lockdown. It's really beneficial and serving really well with your mindset and practical things to really stay positive and keep in those higher energies. So check it out and feel free to ask questions if you want to know more about it. I won't share much on this, but I'll share more later on via email and conversations. Happy Life Habits is taking part in a crowdfunder backed by the Mayor of London called Pay It Forward. If we hit a certain level of funding, they'll top up some funding if we meet certain criteria, and that will then allow us to continue doing these free events and low-cost events to continue serving people and positively impacting their happiness and well-being levels. So when you see the information, think about the value you've received, and think about if you want to help support to continue to share that value, be much appreciated. And various options are available there for you to get various rewards. And if you want to join in on any of the Happy Life Habits communities from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, podcasts, all available for you to join up on. And the last thing, what's your happiness score? 0 to 10, not using the number 7. And I particularly want to hear from Biren, what is your number as we finish today's session? And thank you all. And again, thank you, Sanjay, for being part of this Inspiration Point episode. And over the next few days, it will be loaded onto the podcast, YouTube, and the website for you all to partake in it and share it with others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So hopefully see you all next week for the next Inspiration Point, and take care. Have a safe journey home, and put some of this stuff that's been shared today and in the article into use to help you ride from Thursday onwards as we embark on another phase of lockdown. I just stopped.